Ikaw, Maynard, anong...
Yun nga yung question ko din. Paano ba nababago yung dynamic ng writer tsaka ng director tsaka actors kapag, halimbawa, beginner at tsaka mas established yung playwright? Kasi, for example, pag nababasa ako ng mga text na sinulat ng mga mas matandang writers, very, rich.
Mas matanda. Ouch! Bumusina ka naman. If I understand you correctly, dito din pumapasok sa dynamics yung power relations, di ba? Kasi nangyayari yan minsan sa Virgin Love Fest, wide-eyed playwright na natanggap, syempre tuwang-tuwa siya, tapos ibibigay mo sa isang kilalang direktor na, whatever he says will be babaliktad yung process, Parang suddenly biglang nabulag yung playwright doon sa vision, i-adapt niya na lang yung vision ng playwright, nung director, dahil nga siya ay kilalang director, parang gano'n. So, parang it's almost like breathing behind your neck. Yung
Or
parang
reverse, na kunwari, as a young director, nung nag-start ako as a young director, tapos meron kang established
na playwright.
Paano ko makipag-negotiate dyan?
Right,
diba?
right.
I think, ang isang sagot dyan, yung simula pa lang yung contract Yung parang, hindi kontrata social contract.
Have
kasi
coffee
siya.
muna, gano'n.
Social contract, kunwari, for me, klaro yun, na parang, nung mas nagsisimula ako bilang director, so parang klaro yun na parang gagaguhin ko pa yung script nyo ha. Malinaw na yun. Or, sinasabi ko sa playwrights, papanagutan ko yung script mo, magkamatayan tayo. Yun yung pack ko dito. Pero may mga materials din naman na specifically ako yung kinuha as director because alam nila yung ethics at saka yung ways of making. May ganun din naman na parang kaya in-offer din sa'yo yung material na yun because alam nila na ito yung working conditions mo. Ganito ka So, yun, I think importante lang yung malinaw na usapan sa simula pa lang. Hirap talaga nun. As in, even for a young director, hirap na. Pero paano ako maglalaro dito? Hindi mo na nating stage. Pero hindi naman. Pwede mo namang i-negotiate yun. So I think yun yung from directors din na nasa starstruck sa mga major writers, diba? At meron namang iba na ibibigay lang nila. Sabi ng writers, go ahead. Play it. Maybe may ibang resonance kang dinadala dun sa material. So yung trust na. Meron mo sabi, wag, ito lang siya. At siya ko, canon? Go. Ako, as a director, ako din yung medium nun. Ako rin yung nagko-connect nun. Kahit pag-ano kaluma ng material na yun, binabasa ko rin hindi lang yung piece, kundi pati yung panahon kung kailan siya sinistage. So, another level na naman yun ng meaning making. So, hindi ko alam kung nasagot ko yung tanong. Pero yun lang, may ganun lang na awareness din. At least when you're working as a director. Pero yun din. Kaya malinaw na usapan yun. Sobrang importante. Parang sorry po, chop-chopping ko yung material. Or,
Match siguro is importante. It's a match, from the very beginning. So that match has to be made. Ibig sabihin, ito ba yung tamang director dun sa material? And yung director ba, ito di ba yung tamang playwright para sa kanya? Yun yung isa. Ang pangalawa yung konteksto. Like, iba yung konteksto ng Virgin Love Fest for developing writers. At iba yung konteksto na binigay mo yan sa isang pang-alang Pilipino or PETA na talagang professional staging yung bibigay. I think, that said, Virgin Love Fest would have a safer environment for writers. Kasi ang premise niyan ay director, this is a playwrights festival, not a director's festival. It's not about a director trying to show off his interpretation or prowess, but this is director as a vehicle for communication.
But ako, as young playwrights, if you're still then try to work with all kinds. Kasi I think it will make you richer just because you work with a really crazy overbearing director and someone that's cool to work with. And because you're young, that's the time to just get into trouble. So it also, what doesn't kill you, diba, will make you strong. So part of the experience, I think, diba, it's also that, diba, is exchanging ideas with different types of directors. So try them. If you don't like them, then don't work with them again. Like you're saying, finding a fit, right? Or maybe you just might get along in the future. I feel lucky because like in PETA, we have playwrights. So primarily I've worked with Rodi and Lisa. And because we've known each other for a long time, hindi naman uber madugo. And like, version 8, gano'n na naman si Lisa dati. Pero thank God, hindi mo na yung gagawin eventually.
Sige, let's start going there, Kasi I'll ask you to cite specific examples, no? Good, bad. Para at least makita lang natin yung
In terms of yung process yun kasi for me, like, kasi nga we commission, so, there's really a time, it's like 6 months to a year, so we really have from the first draft, we read it several times with groups. So, by the time we get to the working draft, I don't expect my writer to be there for a while. Kasi parang feeling ko, nag-usap na tayo, we threshed it out, umuo na ako, ito na yung working draft. Ako naman na magtatrabaho ngayon. And then you give me time, maybe 10 days to 2 weeks, till I shape something, and then I come and ask you to watch. Parang ganon. Or, in the process, kung meron na tweak along the way na I decided, ililipat ko tong ganon, I have the writers informed of what's happening. But I really don't expect them to be with me in the room once I get the working draft.
Ikaw si Maynard, every time nire-rehearse yung play mo, nandun ka, no? Araw-araw. I mean, every step of the way. Of the ano. But you don't threaten the director or anything.
Naman ako na Yeah. May ganun din na when I work with foreign writers, sa kanilang text, ang usapan namin sa akin ang context. Kasi of course, ako
ang ganda nun.
Sa akin ang context, okay? So, hindi mo problema kung paano maging Pilipino, ako yun. Sa akin yun. So, hintay lang muna. Kay Maynard naman, parang yung every rehearsal kasi na nandun yung playwright, parang ang tinitingnan ko siya, opportunity siya mag-fail. Every rehearsal is an opportunity to fail fast. Fail na tayo now na, panagutan na natin na hindi nag-work, then palitan na natin agad. So, okay lang ako pag minsan na nandoon yung playwright. Pero meron din naman yung iiwan ka talaga. Tapos bahala ka. May ganun din ha, may mga
Pag ikaw nag-fail, ikaw lang yun.
kaya in the past, nagsastart ako, sabi ko, sige game, galingan natin, acting, papanagon natin, i-direct natin. Tapos kung hindi nag-work talaga yung text, maririnig mo eh. At alam yan ng audience. Kasi give na give, oh. Bigay na bigay lahat. Parang ang ganda, may nangyari. Ano daw ibig sabihin? Siyempre, ang rule ng theater, minsan kasalanan lagi ng direktor. Parang lagi kasalanan.
Pangit ang play, kasalanan director. Dahil sa writer.
Pero may chance na dinig mo talaga yung script at even yung audience, I think dahil na-cultivate naman yung ganung watching audience, nasi-sense din nila pag may mali. So, minsan ganon. Kapag hindi maayos yung relationship, may mag-ganon ako ginagawa. Papanagutan ko to, baski hindi ko alam ibig sabihin, hindi ka nag-mag-usap sa akin. Pero lalabas at lalabas yan sa text. Kapag kita mong hindi alanganin yung collaboration, of course, hindi tamang practice yun. Kaya in-encourage nga na parang usap tayo, kung hindi tayo makikita, go. Pero naman, wag mo namang iwan yung tapos na iniisip.
Actually, ganun din ako about it. I like having the playwright around. Para kung may questions kami, pero not all the time din. Kasi minsan naman, may mga co-actors ka na, gusto ko kararating na ng playwright. Yung simulat mo yun. Kaloka, yung lahat na lang tinanong na. Baka naman kayo.
Nakapag-create sa sariling
Ano naman tayo, explore naman. Parang yun na nga, gusto ko rin ng ganun yung explore muna tayo according to how we understand it. Kaya tapos, saka natin siya tanungin, is this what you had in mind or something? Or is this along the lines at least of your vision for the ano? Diba? Kasi parang kung binigay din masyado,
as a young playwright or an emerging playwright, one of the learnings looking back is kung baguhan ang playwright, make sure you work with an experienced director. Kung baguhan ang playwright, tapos baguhan director din ako, good luck na lang kung saan ako yung material na yun. So,
Masaya din yun, Masaya din yun. Remember Barrio Cordelia?
You have to have those moments.
Hindi ngayon, meron akong parang reverse na experience. Like, may isang amateur group na iniingi yung rights to stage one at Baril. So I gave them free rights. Tapos sabi ko, sige, mountain nyo kasi. Sabi ko, nakakatuwa naman. Gusto nila yung gusto. So bumalik sa akin, yung ano na ngayon, ano na sila, parang description of the show. Dinivice ang Buwan at Baril. Sabi ko, anong ibig sabihin na device work?
Naging pro Marcos.
Tapos
They reset it
tinanong ko
current
yun,
time.
ano ibig sabihin ng device?
Trendy word kasi yun.
Kaya kaya kung minsan abuse na yung device.
Oo,
An
super.
excuse for doing
Whatever you want.
Hindi ko alam kung ano.
Right.
At exact.
Ano?
Theater in the route, tapos nakakall nila site specific. Ano?
Yung site specific nga ang tawag.
Kasalanan niya namin yun. Pero hindi lahat ng doctor yung space ay site specific. Kapag nasa bar ka, bar yun. Pero kung nasa bar ka at may fourth wall ka, parang nakakatawa. So may history din ng theater, kailangan alam din natin. Even as writers and
So, ang nakakatakot doon, for example, I don't know how it's gonna play out. Or sabi ko, ano ibig sabihin yung device? Sabi niya, ipapakita namin yung maid. Di ba invisible yung maid?
Right? Bakit
Pakita
hindi
niyo
ka?
siya, yung maid, yun nga yung point doon na invisible yung So, yun din na, yun ang sinasabi ko.
Right.
Kung if you're a new young playwright and working director, make sure kahit papano the director knows his tools, knows what he's talking about. If he's talking about device work, kanyan, alam niya ang ibig sabihin nun. Yung hindi lang bukang bibig na gawin yun. Kasi most of the time, ang bilis lang maging trendy about these things. Pero
Right.
actually, you don't know what it means and how it plays out.
I'll add to that, parang yung idea na experimentation, experimenting with playwrights and writers. People often mistake experimentation na walang rigor. Na wala siyang, na parang any-any lang. Hindi. So, hindi siya ganoon. So, that's why you have to bring the right people on board. Diba? So, kung experience man yan, director, kung hindi man, at least get some actors na medyo matalas at kaya nilang himayin. Kasi kung problema niyo pa as playwright, paano paartihin yung actor, si director hindi niya alam paano magpaarte, mahirap yun kasi hindi talaga aangat sa page yung mga character.
Yun
So,
yung isa pang much abused term, yung out of the box. No? Yun yung palagi sinasabi ko, kilalanin niyo muna kung ano yung box. Bago niyo mag-out of the box, paano kayo mag-claim na out of the box?
It was never from the box. In the first place.
So what I'm saying is, it translates to know the rules first before you break one.
so construction.
Because how will you say you broke the rules? Hindi mo naman pala alam
Alam yung rules.
Hindi mo.